very experienced. One of the great cyclists in our sport, and I'm a triathlon coach by trade. I've been doing it for 30 years.
Races all right himself though.
I think I'm better known for my coaching.
Yeah.
Had the good fortune of coaching at 4 Olympics and several Ironman champions over the years as well, and I love coaching amateurs and executives and
all different walks of
all
life.
levels and all different walks of life. I think it's all fabulous. It's all about people trying to just achieve, their potential and based on what they have available, etc. But anyway, with all the experience over the years of coaching at the highest level and working with people at different levels, we spend a lot of time kind of slicing and dicing these races, at a high level, and then more and more people are getting coached now and are having that information and kind of feeling like, I always tell this story, when I first started coaching, we used to have to try and educate athletes why they should get coached. And now it's more about, who is the best coach or what's the best coach for you, because more and more people are feeling like, if I'm going to put all this time in, I really want to figure out how to do it as well as so. Anyway, with that little preamble, it would be great to talk about the race, and because this is a more intimate environment, we can definitely share, exchange, and ask questions as we go.
Has anyone done this race before?
I did it last year.
You too, so you've done it last year.
So Thomas, what was your world ranking at the end of the year? Were you number 1 or?
I was number 4 in the end.
Number 4, you slacker. Yes.
So you're coming to the Breckie in the morning?
Yes, tomorrow morning, right?
Anyways, he used to run by me in all the races.
Okay. I can see he looks like a runner.
I know. So I'm not giving you any more tips. No, you've had your share.
You've shot yourself in the foot with that one.
I know, Hong Kong is such a good place for the running. The trail running is kind of my background.
I had no idea there were so many great trails.
It's like world-class trail running. It's 10 minutes from the city.
Insane. And hilly?
And very hilly, lots of technical ascents and descents. I mean, you probably fixed up loads of injuries from people on those runs, right?
We live in Discovery Bay.
Okay.
Discovery Bay is just a hilly area.
Yeah.
So you do all your training there, and then you come to this flat. This is convenient.
Even it
works.
Yeah.
I know. Well, it's a different kind of experience racing. We can talk a little bit about
Oh, definitely. There's no let up. At least with a hilly race, you're used to hurting yourself for a certain amount of time and then getting recovery back. And there are people that are very, very good at that. That's the way they race the best. And then all of a sudden when you come, because a lot of people, Ironman Busselton, it's such a fast Ironman, I'm going to crush it. And they go there and they don't. And they cramp up and they're crippled when they get off the bike because they don't change position for the entire 180k. So sometimes it can be a lot more difficult than you give it credit. It is deceiving.
So I've raced only 2 Ironmans. And the first one was the old Ironman Canada course.
Best course in the world.
Beautiful hilly course. And the other one was Ironman Florida, which is flat as a pancake.
Oh, so two completely different courses.
Completely different. I thought it was so much faster in Florida. And I think I biked 20 minutes faster. And I ran 15 minutes slower. Because it's right. Well, the point is that when you race flat, it's kind of like riding a trainer where it's sustain, and that's actually a really good image for you guys when you're out on the bike here, and especially if you're riding through a headwind. It's like that.
Yeah, come and join us. Come and join us. We just started.
It's good imagery for when you're riding the bike here, and especially if you're riding the headwind. It's kind of that steady pressure on the pedals and rhythm. And if you were going to look at a heart rate chart after a race like, say, this versus a hilly course, it's much more flatlining. So if you do it really well and if you check your ego a little bit, you can really pace yourself well on a course like this and set yourself up for a great run.
Absolutely.
Where people get into trouble sometimes on a flat course with other people is ego gets in the way and they start surging by people and racing, and then it becomes intervals for...
Particularly this course, because you really don't have any sections longer than about 17 kilometres. So from here to over the bridge is about 17k, and then it's all 11k out, 11k back, 11k out, 11k back to here, then put 6K out, 6K back, so you can break it down, but you can also get yourself in a lot of trouble, and all of a sudden after, you know, 2 lots of 11Ks, you're like, I don't feel so good anymore.
Yeah.
So,
and with 2,000 people on a flat floor, of course, it can clump up, and there can be groups out there, and so it can start to be, you know, a bit more dynamic and passing and that. So, you know, I always try and encourage athletes to think about trying not to put lactic acid in your legs out there. You know, this is an endurance, almost ultra endurance event, and if you can keep it as steady aerobic as possible for the whole bike, particularly, that really will set you up for a better run. And so how do you do that when you're in a group? That's the question. When you're not in a group, but around a group and around different people. And what I would do when I'm out there racing, what I advise athletes to do is, if there is a clump of athletes, like, you don't want to draft, right? Like, that's against the rules. So what I will do is I will sit off the back of that group, and I'll pace off the group, and I'm a legal distance back, and I'll kind of watch the group and watch for dynamics. And if it starts to split up, or sometimes another group will come through and it'll split it up, then I'll be like, okay, if it's going to split up, then I'm going to start moving my way up again. But what a lot of people mistake to do is they get in that group, and either they're right in the group, which is just blatant getting a free ride, and kind of not why you sign up for this, really, right? Like for me, it's about challenging the course and getting a good workout and enjoying the day, and you know, or you like put in this massive sprint of glory to get by this pack, and you're out there and you're just killing yourself, and you look back over your shoulder and they're like 20% up, they're stretching their quads and having a drink out of their bottle.
It's the most frustrating feeling ever.
Yeah. So, you know, and you will find that over the course of 90K, there'll be parts where things might clump up and parts where it stretches out, and you might see the same people for a while, and then they're kind of off and gone, or sometimes they take off at the start, and then you see them like 40 or 50K later, and oh yeah, there's the yellow jersey again, or whatever.
Not looking so great now.
Yeah, exactly. The sprint to glory. So anyway, why don't we back this up a little bit, and we'll talk a little bit more structure through the day, and especially for you those that are a little bit newer or want to pick up. So just, I guess we could start by thinking about even tonight and tomorrow, and how to manage yourself going into the race. And you know, there's a couple of things to think about. There's physically, how do you want to manage yourself, and then there's also psychologically, how do you want to manage yourself. So I always remind athletes that kind of, you know, the hay's in the barn, and you've done your training, and there's no workouts really that you're going to do tomorrow that are going to positively impact your race. So the main thing you want to do is try and stay off your feet as much as you possibly can and rest your legs. I always try and tell athletes that one of your goals should be to try and be in your hotel by 12 or 1, you know, with your feet up on the bed, watching movies. You know, if you can do that, then you've done it right, and you're just really
I can tell you that I spoke to at least 5 or 6 pros today, and that's exactly, they missed emails because they were feet up watching movies in their room. So
just they're just like recharging physically and mentally,
and removing themselves from you know, things that can get you not upset but make you nervous. Get the registration done, then remove yourself. Because otherwise you'll end up overthinking, overanalyzing. Oh, you go past the expo, should I buy myself a new race kit? Should I buy myself just remove yourself from the situation. Go to a nice.
He's got a bag full of goodies.
I told you, we all do it. Don't worry.
Take them home and try them in training and use them for the next race.
No, actually it's a training, something training.
Perfect.
That's good.
Yeah, so you know, that's a great point, Belinda, because you know, I coach a lot of like busy executives, and a lot of them, when it's time to, it's like they're looking forward to their taper and their rest so they can catch up on work. And
there are other stuff. That's right.
That's right. Yeah, or I even
clear the brain. You got to clear the brain.
In the 2 weeks, say going into their full Ironman, they're like, "Oh, I'm training way less," and they start to be like having business trips and getting on the airplane more. And stuff. And you're like, okay, so we'll educate them further out. Okay, this is your, you know, let's rest like a pro as well, and try and clear the schedule a little bit, and actually have some mental downtime too, because it really is, it's a lot of mental energy to stay on task as your body's getting tired. You know, you're gonna have to look within yourself many times. So the take-home message here is, you know, give yourself permission to get your feet up and rest the next couple of days. It is good to get out there and move a little bit. If you haven't been down to the ocean, you should go check it out, and we'll talk about this in a sec, because I know some of you would be concerned about that. So I think swimming's open at 10 tomorrow. What I've noticed with the water is that it seems to get a little bit choppier as the day goes on.
In the morning it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It was glassy this morning.
It was beautiful. That was like the light coming
It was,
in.
but then by the time we came through again,
Yeah.
it had definitely picked up.
It picked
and that was
up.
only probably an hour and a half, or an hour to an hour and a half later.
Yeah. So it's worth it just to get down and check out sort of where you go in to the water, actually walk out there and get a sense of how, you know, the sand goes down and how long you'll be running for. And I think it's good to get out in the water and just sort of get a sense of your bearings, do a couple of pickups just to activate your body a little bit and feel some water, but don't do too much. It'll help you with your nerves too, just to have clean out there already. If you're going to do any cycling, you know, typically I would tell an athlete the day before the race, if I was going to program a workout, it would be a 20-minute ride. And I would usually say the goal is to test your gears and your brakes.
Make sure everything's working perfectly. That's right.
And maybe do 2 or 3 minutes of just tempo work. So 2 or 3 minutes at
A bit of a pickup.
at your 2.5 to 3 hour pace, not at your 10-minute pace. Right. So just a little bit of rhythm, just to get blood flowing, but nothing more than that. The other thing that you can do tonight is an important meal. Okay. A lot of people. Evening before the race, they're thinking, okay, I gotta eat like a massive meal, and and you just put all that food in your stomach, and then
And you can't sleep.
Where's it gonna go? Right? Like it's gotta come out at some point. So have a really nutritious, carbohydrate-rich meal tonight, and all through tomorrow. Just don't go too hard on the fiber. Like watch out, like don't hit the salad bar hard. Not too much fruit and vegetables because it's a laxative. You don't want to have unplanned porta potty stops. You want to be salting your food, everything you eat.
You will. There's nothing you can do on race day to keep up with how much you're going to lose.
Yeah.
And people, and I always love it when you come to a race destination like this. I hear it every time, particularly in Kona, when people say, "Oh, it's actually it's cool.
Yes.
It's cool."
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be as hot, but I mean, I've been here. This is my 5th year now. Every year it's been insanely hot. It's going to be a hot race. We may get lucky with being overcast, but I think for the majority of today, when you guys would have been out there, it was pretty hot.
Yeah.
So I always say plan for it to be hot, and then anything extra is a bonus.
Yeah, so pre-hydration and sodium loading
Definitely.
tonight and tomorrow is really important. Make sure that you're not just drinking water all day tomorrow, that you're mixing it up.
Don't wanna
Even
flush your system.
juice, electrolyte drink, carbohydrate drink. So just mix it up so you're not flushing all the electrolytes out of your system by drinking water all day long. Okay? And then tomorrow, plan your day nutritionally as well tomorrow. So I always joke, if you've been to my talks before, I always feel like a parent here. Make sure that you have your snacks, and make sure you have your juice box, and
You should never be going hungry
or
tomorrow. So
thirsty.
there should be no period of time tomorrow when you have hunger pains or you're thirsty. But then on the other side, there should be no time when you are like, oh my gosh, I am so full at the buffet breakfast. This morning. So I think it's just to have 3 good meals and graze, but no extreme on either end.
That's right. Yeah, snack through the day, and when you go to check your bike in, it's really hot over there. It's I always
Particularly when you check your body, and there's no shade. Absolutely.
When you're standing in line
Yeah.
and getting your photo taken
Yep.
of your bike checking in, it's really hot. So just make sure you have some food with you and keep
Keep that hydration going.
Yeah. And then I think the other thing that's important to talk about is just sort of your mental preparation the day before the race. A lot of times, we sign up for these things because they're a big challenge, right? And that's what makes them so satisfying to finish, is that you're putting yourself out of your comfort zone, you're tackling something, that not many people have the courage to sign up for and train for. So in some ways, it's like high-five you for even
Putting this
on the map
in this
and
situation.
deciding that you're going to tackle this. I mean, it's you're already exceptional for having done the training you did. Hopefully that you did to get there. But it's also important to keep perspective on it too. It's swimming and biking and running like you've done in training. Okay, so it's not anything. You're not asking yourself to do anything superhuman or crazy. And if you pace yourself well and you kind of keep this attitude of, really it's me against the course, and how am I going to manage myself through the day, through through the swim and the bike and the run according to my skill set, you know, what I've practiced, then it kind of keeps it real. You know, I think it's when you start either blowing the task up too big, or you get your own personal expectations up higher than maybe where your skill set is. That's when you start to get into a little bit of, you know, stress. Now, that being said, I mean, was there ever a race meaningful to you that you didn't feel a little bit nervous about?
You know, it's funny. You remember, obviously you remember all your good races, and a good race for a professional athlete is a race where they've either won or they've hit the podium, because that's what we're aiming for. But some of my most memorable, the ones where I learnt the most, were the ones that I was this close to walking off the field. And so I remember one race in Germany where I still get goosebumps thinking about it, because I had a great swim, but the biggest problem with me is my run. And some days I'd have a good run, other days if it was going to fall apart, that's where it would fall apart. So I did have a bit of a mental battle with the run. And more likely I'd have a great swim bike, set myself up for a good race, and then I would fall apart mentally on the run, not so much physically. And I remember getting to about the 15-kilometre mark of the marathon, and I started to walk, and I remember talking to myself. I mean, it must have looked like a crazy woman, but I literally talked to myself and said, okay, you're not doing this, you're not walking, you either, and I stopped myself and I said, you either walk off the course, or you get back on and you run this marathon like you have trained to do, stop feeling sorry for yourself, and just get the job done. And I struggled with what I was going to do for at least a good kilometre of walking, and I'd almost convinced myself that my race was done and that I was just going to step off the course. And I started feeling good again, because, you know, I went through the aid stations, got something to drink, something to eat, and made a decision there and then that I was not going to quit, that I'd invested far too much to just quit, and that I was going to do it. And anyway, the second half of the marathon was fantastic. I didn't come top 3. I don't even think I got top 5, but I came from nowhere and thinking I was going to DNF to actually running a reasonable run time, feeling good about myself. And the best part is I didn't have a DNF next to my name, because there's nothing worse. I mean, don't get me wrong, we've all got them, we've all had them, and I think they help you to grow, but you don't want to have them if you can help it. But I learned so much from that day, literally talking myself out of walking off the course, and I'll never forget it. And I've done 50 Ironman distance races, and that was one that I remember the most. And as I said, it was one of my worst results overall, but it's one of the ones I was most proud of.
You know what I love about that story? There's a couple of factors, but one is, you know, different people motivate themselves different ways. You give yourself a little bit of tough love almost, right?
I think I'm just a little talking to.
Yeah, that's right. And that works for some people, and some people have to be kind to themselves,
of course,
or whatever, right? Yeah. But sometimes you need to give yourself a little.
And you know what works for you. That's the most important thing to find, is what works for you.
Yeah, totally. And then the other thing that's really important in that story is that sometimes your legs can come back around.
Good. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. And in a longer race, you know, like, for sure. Do you want to join us?
Yeah.
Come and grab a seat. Yeah, please. Yeah. For everybody. This is your one chance to sit in the VIP section.
The VIP. Yeah. If we stay here long enough, they might be able to kick us out.
Yeah, that's right. They might serve dinner eventually, right? Yeah.
And they do, and I think particularly in a hot race like this, you often get off the bike and you feel terrible.
Yeah. So the point I was going to make is that I think in any race that I've ever done, and for those of you who've done a few of them, there's always sections that are hard. And then there's also sections that you feel good. And it's funny, it's not like I started feeling good and then it got really terrible. You know, there might be 20 or 30K on the bike where you're just like not feeling it, right? And then for whatever reason, maybe you get a little bit of a cloud cover, or the calories start kicking in or whatever, and it comes back around. But it's a really good reminder, you know, if you're out there and it's like, you know, not feeling great, or am I going to make it, that getting a little calories in or whatever, you can bring it back around. So day before your race, the best thing you can do is work on your mental preparation. So part of what we were talking about was just kind of keeping it real. Not, you know, you're going out to swim and bike and run like you've been practicing. I like to remind athletes that if you're nervous, to bring some of your best sessions with you, kind of mentally, in your mental back pocket. So if you find you're setting up the transition on race morning, you get nervous, it's good to think back. You know, know, on your best bike ride or your best swim or that kind of thing, just to remind yourself, okay, I've been there in the trenches, I've done it, I'm ready. And then the other thing is to think the course through from start to finish tomorrow. So, you know, I said challenge you to be on your bed and feet up, you know, by noon or 1 or so. Spend some time, close your eyes, and think the course through from start to finish, and try and think realistically what it's going to feel like as you progress, and try and think about effort and heat and all that kind of thing. And think about how you want to manage each section or segment of it. Break it into smaller pieces, and within your skill set. Okay, so when you're out there in the water and you're swimming, and you know, and there's people around you, how do you want to manage that within your skill set? And when you're out on the bike and you know you're 40, 50, 60k into it, you're starting to get a little bit more tired, how do you manage that? You know, again, within your skill set, and same with the run. Okay, and think about when it starts getting harder, kind of how you want to take care of yourself and treat yourself as well. I used to have this thing with Lisa Bentley, had many battle royales with this woman. There's a woman I coached for 11 years, and she won 11 Ironmans, and it's just was one of the all-time greats. And we used to joke about having like a little mini Lance on our shoulder, right? And when it got hard, what would Lance say to me? And he wouldn't say, "Oh man, you should have done more intervals," or you know, or you know, she looks good and you look terrible. But all the little crazy things that we say to ourselves when the body's under stress, right? Like it's natural you start to talk yourself down. So the joke was, what do you need to say to yourself, you know, when you're out there? Because really, it's just you that are taking care of yourself out there. So you can mentally rehearse that. You can just have generalizations on how do you want to treat yourself, and what do you want to say to yourself when it gets hard? How can you bring it back on task? Okay. So do some visualization, and then also think specifically about race morning and before the race, because that's when people tend to get nervous as well.
That was right. That was the only time of triathlon that I didn't like was race morning. The period when you got to transition and before the gun went off.
Yeah, that's right. Oh. You know, and if you're newer to it, like you walk in and there's like all these, you know, buff dudes and women, and they've got their superhero outfits on, you know, those triathlon kits that are, you know, and they're putting their, you know, $15,000 bikes in the rack, and you're just like, oh man, like what did I sign up for, right? But it's good for you to think about that environment, walking into that environment, and just thinking about where you want your head and your heart to be as well, and thinking about why you were doing it. Because it's not about the other people there, it's about you having your own experience, and really it's about celebrating your health and fitness and training that got you to there, and then it's also about testing your body and, you know, seeing what you can do, you know, on this course under these conditions too. And, you know, it's a little bit of a segue, but one of the things I truly love about our sport is that it's swim, bike, and run, but every course you go to, it's always a different challenge, you know, like the water could be choppy, it could be flat, it could be ocean, it could be warm, it could be cold, hilly bike, windy bike, etc., etc. So it's always different, even though it's the same sport. So get excited about, you know, what the day's going to bring you, and what you might learn, and how you might manage the day out there. All right. So, guys, if you have questions, just like copy. It's such a small environment. I think we should talk about the swim. Okay? So, you guys, who's confident in the swim? Who's nervous?
Nervous about the swim? No, not so much.
Yeah, you did. You got some back. A little bit nervous. Yeah.
And I think.
Well, actually, you know what's right? Hand up for nervous. Yeah. Hand up.
No swim.
Sorry?
No swim, right? No.
Nervous on the swim. Yeah.
More because.
Yeah.
I mean, we can swim, okay.
Yeah.
But I just tried it out this morning, and I just felt like I got through the breaks with more effort than I would have liked.
Than you would have liked to have given here.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
And it is completely different.
Yeah.
And I think for me, coming from Queensland, where I grew up in the surf, I don't even think about it. But for a lot of people that do all of their training in flat water or in the pool, you know, it is a humongous difference, huge difference in your swim stroke, in the way you feel. You know, obviously in the pool you get to dictate when you want to breathe, out there when you're in choppy surf. You don't often get that opportunity. So when you can't breathe, what's the first thing in human nature is you start to panic, because everyone likes to be able to breathe when they want to breathe. And I think even today with and I've noticed over the last few years, last year in particular, I mean, we had really tough conditions last year for the swim. Even for me, I was quite happy I wasn't doing the race last year. So it was tough. And that's why I think Lance's point about going down there and just getting used to the break, because it's quite a long break. I think there was probably 4 or 5, maybe even 6 sets before you got out. So definitely, the more familiar you can be with here, the better. So that you'll find that most of the pros that have been here for the week, they would have gone out and swum at a similar time to what they'll be swimming tomorrow, on Sunday, excuse me, just to get used to what the conditions are like at that particular time.
What's the best way to go through the break?
Well, let's talk about that.
Exactly.
So one of the important things that came up was you're going to have to accept that it's going to be maybe a little bit more effort early in the swim than in a typical flat water triathlon where you might be able to pace it out. So if you can get in your mind that you're going to have to work harder
so
to get through the break, I think that's really really key. When I watched last year, I watched the sprint triathlon the day before, which was a little bit more novice swimmers, and I think the break was a little bit harder that day as well. One of the most common mistakes that some of the more novice swimmers were making was that they would kind of either try and walk through the break and it would hit them, or they would go under, they'd come up, but then they would just stand there and maybe even get pushed back as they were trying to regroup and get ready for the next wave coming in.
They weren't moving. So it was just, they weren't making any. They weren't making progress.
They were sort of stuck between 2 breaks. And so what you learn if you swum in a break like that, the first thing is that you want to try and time it and duck under it. And the cheeky Aussies, they like grab the sand.
Grab onto the sand.
They grab the sand
so
on the bottom and they're waiting for it to come up.
Dive
and then
up,
they
down.
pull themselves.
I pull both hands in the sand, and that's an anchor. Wave goes straight over the top of you. You can see when it's gone over the top, and then I push myself out and start swimming straight away. Look again as soon as the next set comes, and you might have to do that 4, 5, 6 times for you, but it works every time. And then finally, before you know it, it takes a lot of effort because you're holding your breath for a little bit longer than you would like to wait for the wave to go over. But the most important thing is as soon as that wave's gone over, you push yourself up and you start swimming again. Same thing. So it's like that. It's like
that's super important. So when you come up,
don't stand around
you have
trying
to
to get your
swim
breath
hard,
back.
and then when that next
there's a garden
break comes in, you have to be ready to go under and come up and swim hard again. Because once you get through it, then it's like it's golden.
It is,
right?
and it actually feels so much easier because you've worked so hard, and then you can actually find yourself, you can get into a rhythm. And I think the best way with this swim is most of you, if you've seen the swim, there's a turning can out there, so you'll swim straight out to a main turning can, and then you'll take a left-hand turn. I would say prepare mentally to be close to redlining it until you get to that first turning can, and just know that once you do, then you've got a really long amount of time where you're behind the brakes, so you're not going to get smacked by waves, where you can then get your breath back, get your heart rate back down, get yourself into a rhythm. So I think mentally just knowing, okay, for that first section, until I hit that can and turn left, it's going to be hard. But once I do that, I know that's where I'm going to get some reprieve.
Now that we've sort of, placed fear in your mind, you know that like almost everybody in the race got through it eventually, so it's just more about minimizing your time between that break and almost like limiting your suffering. It's a little bit more effort in the short term just to get out and through it and get it done, and then if you're a real legend on the way back in, you can catch
bonus,
a wave.
you get pushed back.
Which I wish you could all wait and see. Go after the pro, because there's some pro men here that are actually really, really good at it, and I'm actually really looking forward to watching them on Sunday.
You'll see they'll be actually 30 seconds back. And
Absolutely.
And it's almost like they're passing the other guys.
Luke McKenzie and Terenzo Bazzoni are both ex-surf swimmers, and it's really cool to watch them. But you guys will be busy swimming then, so don't worry.
So transitions, I would just remind you to make sure that you take some time to walk through, and I always make this joke that your IQ is cut in half on race day. So think about making it idiot proof, know exactly where your bike is, count racks, find a sponsor sign, count palm trees. There's palm trees over there, but you know, it's actually almost good entertainment when you're standing on the sideline.
You
you're watching people like running around, like trying to find their body.
To put it in perspective, though, Javier Gomez, one of the greatest triathletes on this planet, did the ITU World Long Course Championships last weekend and won. I watched him come into T1 out of the swim to look for his bike. He stopped short. Obviously saw a Specialized, thought it was his, realised it wasn't. He then kept running, ran past his bike, doubled back, and then finally found it. But you know, we're talking about one of the greatest triathletes in the world, and a short course athlete too, where transitions are make or break.
Yeah.
So it just shows you that you're right. You lose your head. And with last year's race, there was quite a long transition from when you exited the water to when you got into transition. It was really long. You used to come back through the finish. It's not this time. You actually come straight back up the beach, straight up the set of stairs, and you are straight into transition. So it's very short as compared to, which means you've got less time to use that brain. So you really need to be thinking as soon as you get out of the water. I actually start thinking about transition just before, about the last few strokes before I get out of the water. What I need to do, what's the first thing I'm going to do when I hit my bike. So I think start planning ahead. Because there's nothing worse than getting flustered, you know, when you knock your helmet off your bike or you lose a shoe. So you are not going to win a race from a fast transition in this particular race. But you can certainly make it a lot harder.
And be prepared for your heart rate and your breathing rate to go up too, as blood's going from your shoulders to your legs. You know,
particularly now they've thrown a set of stairs.
It doesn't mean you're done. You're oh my gosh, I'm not as fit as I thought I was. That's fun. I'm just realizing they're going to start the sprint race briefings in a few minutes. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the bike and the run as well. So the fourth event in triathlon is nutrition. Okay, and so nutrition and pacing are key. So what I would really encourage you to do is to take some time in amongst your visualization and actually think about when you're going to eat and drink throughout the day. It's really easy to forget when you're in the mix with other athletes out there and suddenly you're an hour into it and you're like, you've drank this much of your bottle, or
haven't eaten anything.
You know, so you want to eat and drink on a schedule. And then I really encourage my athletes to actually write it out, what they're going to have every 15 minutes. It's a form of mental rehearsal, and also make sure that you have your bases covered. Just very, very generally, most endurance athletes will take between 200 and 350 calories an hour on the bike. Okay, so smaller, closer to 200, you might be closer to 300 because you're a bit bigger, more muscular. So look at what's in your product. Okay. The other key element is sodium. Okay, especially in this climate. So very briefly, sodium actually helps you absorb the fluids that you drink. Okay, so we talked about preloading your sodium, but throughout as well. So typically you want to have between 700 to 1,000 milligrams per hour. Okay, and that's a good number to hold on to in your head. You know, 1,000's easy to remember. Okay, that doesn't mean 1,000 milligrams in salt pills. That means looking at what's in your products, because there's huge ranges between different kinds of gels, bars, drinks, etc. So wherever your shortfall is there, you should make up with the salt pills, okay? And make sure you look at the salt pills too. They're like, oh, I had tons of salt pills and I still cramped or whatever, but then they find out the salt pill only had like 50 milligrams of sodium or something like that. Okay, so pay attention to that. 1,000 milligrams. Watch your bottles. Make sure that you're drinking. I would say, if you're a light sweater, at least a large bottle an hour in this climate. Closer to a large 1.5 or a liter per hour of fluid is a really good standard. Okay, but again, drinking on a schedule. And then typically we find when people get to the run that they cut back a little bit because heart rate tends to be a bit higher. So if you're 300 calories an hour on the bike, you might go to 200 on the run. You know, which is like a gel every 30 minutes, or it's a little cup of Coke pretty much at every aid station would work out to that. Okay. Really be diligent with your aid stations here, you guys. I can't emphasize that enough.
You should not be skipping any, particularly on the run.
Do not skip, and it's
I don't think you will, but
at the start and the end of every aid station is water. So it's one for the mouth, one for the head at the start, one for the mouth, one for the head at the end, and then in between there's cola and carbo drink. So if you're planning on using that for calories, make sure that you hold the cup and you get it all in your mouth, and it's not turbo drink on the head. I've seen that several times. I remember Chris Lieto, coaching Chris Lieto, who finished second in Hawaii one year, one of the greats, and they had a slow-mo of him on NBC coverage, right? And he's like, I think he was in the lead even at that point in the energy lab, and it showed him he grabbed the cup and he throws it, and he actually completely missed his head, which was even better. And it was like this yellow stream just flowing in slow-mo over his head. I'm like, that's not my athlete. Anyways, yeah, eating and drinking on a schedule, and then we touched on flatlining your heart rate, so trying to keep it as even as possible.
Which I think is, you should be able to do it on this bike course, because apart from the bridge both ways, there's no reason why you can't keep it. You shouldn't have to spike it. The only time it should be spiked is going up over the bridge and then when you're on the way home.
Patient in the headwind, right? Like don't battle the headwind. Just try and stay arrow.
And one of the hardest things for me when I did this race was swimming the bike were great. It was the run where I had the real mental battle, because it's straight out. You can see how far it is. And sometimes it just, how am I ever going to get there? And you finally make it to that 10.5 kilometre mark, and then you think, oh my God, I've got to go back all the way back. So break it down into segments. I used to break it down aid station to aid station, particularly in hot races. Just think about making it to the next aid station. Think about what you're going to take when you get to that aid station. I used to always like to take cold sponges too. I used to put them under my armpits. I used to run with 2 pieces of ice in my hand. Anything to trick your mind into thinking that it's cooler than what it actually is. It makes a huge difference. Because at the end of the day, everyone says, oh, I had a really lousy run, I'm not a good runner. You are good runners. But the problem is, it's at the end of the day when everything's feeling horrible, you think you're just having a bad run. And it's all about just staying mentally focused on top of it, realizing that, okay, I don't feel good, but there's a good chance everyone out there is not feeling good, and just aid station to aid station, break it down, keep yourself feeling cool, as cool as possible, and you'll get there.
Okay, so we're getting the signal that we're going to start meeting, but here's what I wanted to offer you guys. If you guys have questions or you want to discuss things, I'd be happy to kind of move a little bit further back with you and chit chat for a few minutes. Is anybody going for that? Does anyone want to hear a bit more about
after the race recovery?
Yeah.
Before you've got another race coming up.
Yeah.
Sorry.